I remember the night that changed everything. I had just returned from a long day filled with the ordinary humdrum of life when I discovered a letter that shattered my calm and ignited a fire deep within me. It was from Charles, an inmate whose words spoke of raw, desperate longing, a longing that seemed to mirror the secret parts of my own soul. In that single moment, my heart was both shattered and set aflame, and I sensed that nothing in my life would ever be the same. My name is Kimberly, and up until that fateful evening, I believed I was living a life that many would envy. I was a housewife in a quiet American suburb, tucked away in a modest home with my husband, Mike. Mike, a dedicated parole officer, spent his days enforcing the rules he believed in so strongly, a role that demanded both strength and integrity. He never imagined that beneath our perfectly maintained exterior, a storm was brewing. I had built a life with routines and familiar faces, yet a restless desire had been quietly stirring inside me for years. The letter came on an ordinary Tuesday. I had just finished preparing dinner, and the quiet of the night seemed to promise nothing more than an evening of simple contentment. But as I opened the envelope, my hands trembled with anticipation. Charles' neat, looping handwriting on the envelope was almost poetic, and his words inside were equally compelling. He wrote of regret, hope, and the kind of passion that felt forbidden, almost dangerous. His letter spoke of life behind bars and dreams of freedom, and in those lines, I found a mirror of my own suppressed desires. I had always been curious about the unknown. Even as I managed our home, took care of Mike, and played the role society expected of me, there was a part of me that longed for something more exciting and unpredictable. Reading his letter, I felt as if someone had opened a door to a secret room inside me, a room filled with desire, longing, and a yearning for a connection I never knew I craved. Charles' words were like a whisper in the dark, stirring feelings that I had kept locked away, hidden from even my closest self. As I read, the world around me seemed to fade. The familiar creaks of our old house, the steady ticking of the clock on the wall, and the routine smells of dinner all melted into the background. In their place, there was only the intense, echoing rhythm of my own heartbeat. Every word Charles wrote resonated with a part of me that had been starved for attention. His letter made me feel seen, understood, and, above all, alive. I knew then that I was stepping onto a path from which there was no easy return. My heart pounded with both fear and excitement as I realized that this was the spark that would ignite a dangerous journey, a journey of infidelity, passion, and secrets that would eventually intertwine with the life I shared with Mike. I was acutely aware of the risk, a risk that could shatter the delicate balance of my marriage and upend the structured world I had built. Yet, in that moment, the promise of something new and exhilarating was too powerful to ignore. Little did I know, the flames ignited by that single letter would soon burn into a wildfire. I was about to discover that the allure of forbidden words could lead to even bolder actions, and that sometimes, the heart knows no boundaries, even when it means crossing lines we once thought unbreakable. And as I tucked away Charles' letter, a cold shiver ran down my spine, hinting at the storm of emotions and secrets that lay ahead. In the quiet hours of the night, when the house was finally silent and the world outside had slipped into sleep, I discovered a hidden part of myself that I had long kept locked away. Every time I opened an envelope from Charles, I felt as though I was stepping through a secret door into a realm filled with passion, mystery, and an intensity that my everyday life never offered. At first, it began with small replies, a few lines scribbled in a notebook after the children had gone to bed or when I found a rare moment of solitude. Charles' letters were a mix of raw emotions and unfiltered honesty. He spoke of regret and hope in a way that made the walls of my mundane life tremble with possibility. In his words, I found a mirror to the discontent that had been simmering inside me for years. Each letter was a sweet escape from the monotony of my routine, the endless cycle of cooking, cleaning, and the silent, heavy presence of guilt that often accompanied my thoughts about our marriage. I began to anticipate the days when I would receive his letters. The postman's knock on the door became a heartbeat of its own, each envelope a promise of forbidden love and dangerous intimacy. I would carefully hide them away, reading each word slowly, letting the sentences wash over me. Charles wrote about the stark, oppressive reality of prison life, and yet, somehow, his words overflowed with a yearning for freedom. It was a freedom that I craved too, a freedom from the invisible chains of routine and unspoken sacrifices. My days grew filled with a secret excitement. While Mike was busy with his job as a parole officer, often working long hours and facing the harsh realities of crime and punishment, I was living in a world of soft whispers and heartfelt confessions. His absence at home gave me the time to explore these feelings, to indulge in the fantasy of a life unbound by the strict rules and expectations that had defined me for so long. I started to believe that perhaps there was more to my existence than the neat, predictable path I had always followed. Yet, even as the letters filled me with desire, a shadow of guilt lurked behind every word. I knew that every secret correspondence deepened the rift between the life I led and the one I dreamed of. The thrill of each new letter was tempered by the reality that my actions could one day shatter the fragile stability of my marriage. Still, with every stroke of my pen as I wrote back, I felt more alive. I began to confide in my letters what I had never been able to say out loud, that I felt trapped in a world that prized conformity over passion, that I yearned for a connection that was daring and true. There were nights when I would sit by the window, the soft glow of the street lamp painting my face in hues of loneliness and longing. In those moments, I imagined a different life, a life where I could be free to love without fear of judgment or repercussion. I pictured Charles, not just as an inmate behind bars, but as a symbol of hope, of a raw and unedited version of passion that defied the ordinary. Each letter from him was a small rebellion against the constraints of my everyday existence. The more we exchanged our thoughts and dreams on paper, the more I lost myself in this hidden world. It was a place where the rules of society melted away, replaced by the honest language of our hearts. And though I knew that every moment spent in this secret conversation risked the life I had built with Mike, the lure of those forbidden words was simply too intoxicating to resist. The more our letters flew between us, the more I craved to feel Charles' presence beyond the ink on paper. My heart pounded at the thought of a forbidden touch, of stolen moments in a place where reality and desire blurred. I remember the day I decided that words alone were no longer enough. I arranged my first visit to the prison, my pulse quickening as I stepped through heavy gates into a world so starkly different from my quiet home. There, in a guarded visiting room, I finally met Charles face to face. His eyes, dark and full of unspoken promises, met mine. In that moment, I felt an electrifying jolt, a collision of fear and longing that swept away all my doubts. Our conversations during those visits were brief but charged with a passion that left me trembling long after I left. The cold, clinical environment of the prison was transformed by the warmth of our connection. Every whispered word, every lingering glance, was a declaration of rebellion against the life I had always known. As the days turned into weeks, our encounters grew more intense. I began to exchange not only letters but secret signals during my visits. A gentle squeeze of his hand, a knowing smile behind closed eyes, each small gesture fueled an inferno inside me. Yet it was not just Charles who ignited this newfound passion. In the undercurrent of my hidden life, I discovered other desires I had long suppressed. A chance encounter at a small roadside diner introduced me to Andrew, a charming man with a tender smile and a dangerous glint in his eye. Our meeting was unplanned, almost accidental, but it sparked something raw and irresistible in me. In the quiet corners of dimly lit parking lots and empty hotel rooms, I found myself surrendering to a series of clandestine meetings with Andrew. His touch was different from Charles. Where Charles' presence was a bittersweet reminder of confinement and longing, Andrew offered a fleeting, wild freedom that made my heart race. Each affair carried its own flavor of ecstasy and betrayal. With Charles, every meeting was laced with the risk of discovery, a secret shared in hushed tones and hidden glances, a promise whispered in the shadowed corridors of the prison. With Andrew, the thrill was in the spontaneity, in the unbridled passion that left me breathless and questioning what I truly wanted. I found myself torn between these two worlds, the calculated, intense intimacy with Charles and the impulsive, fiery encounters with Andrew. My body and soul became a battleground where love and lust clashed with the remnants of duty and guilt. The duality of my existence grew heavier with each stolen moment. I would lie awake at night, haunted by the thought of Mike, my husband, and the life we had built together. His unwavering commitment as a parole officer, his dedication to a world of order and justice, made my heart ache with both love and a painful sense of betrayal. Yet, each time I surrendered to the allure of my secret affairs, I felt a liberation that was impossible to ignore, a wild freedom that whispered promises of being truly seen and desired. The nights after our encounters were the hardest. I would return home with a mind swirling in a cocktail of ecstasy and remorse, the taste of forbidden kisses lingering on my lips. I questioned who I was becoming. Was I merely a reckless woman chasing a momentary thrill, or was I finally discovering a deeper truth about my own desires? I began to see myself in fragments, a devoted wife by day and a passionate seeker of forbidden love by night. Every encounter left me more entangled in a web of lies. I could sense that my actions were setting off ripples that would soon disturb the calm surface of my familiar life. I knew that if Mike ever discovered these secrets, the consequences would be devastating. Yet, as the passion built and the betrayals deepened, I felt powerless to stop the descent. I clung to each secret meeting, each passionate kiss, even as the darkness of my choices grew heavier. And in the silence of those moments, as I tried to reconcile the parts of me that longed for freedom and those that ached with guilt, I wondered, how long could I continue to dance on the edge of this dangerous chasm, knowing that one misstep could shatter everything I held dear? The lines between love and lust blurred, and I found myself teetering on the brink of a truth I was both desperate to embrace and terrified to face. As the days passed, the delicate balance I had maintained began to crumble. I started noticing small signs that the secret world I had built was no longer safely hidden. It began with subtle changes in Mike's behavior, an inquisitive glance, a lingering silence, and a growing distance that hinted at a suspicion I had never expected. I could feel the weight of my choices pressing down on me, and with every passing moment, the stakes grew higher. One chilly evening, as I was tucking another carefully penned reply to Charles into an envelope, I heard Mike's footsteps approaching the living room. My heart raced as I scrambled to hide the letter, my hands trembling with the realization that my secret was slipping away. Mike's voice, calm yet edged with concern, called my name. "Kimberly, is everything all right?" he asked, his eyes searching mine with a mix of worry and something else I couldn't quite place. I managed a weak smile, convincing myself and him that all was well. Yet, beneath the surface, I knew that every hidden word, every clandestine meeting, was weaving a web that threatened to catch me at any moment. The guilt became overwhelming when, one afternoon, I accidentally left one of Charles' letters on the kitchen counter. Mike found it. I remember his puzzled expression as he unfolded the letter, his eyes scanning the forbidden words that spoke of dreams behind iron bars and desperate longing for freedom. That moment ignited a storm within him. His face hardened with the weight of betrayal, and I could see the conflict in his eyes, a mixture of professional duty and personal hurt that pained me to witness. Mike's suspicions soon escalated beyond the discovery of the letter. At work, his colleagues mentioned a recent increase in security concerns and investigations into prison communications. It was as if his two worlds, the one at home and the one at work, were colliding in a way that made every secret I kept all the more dangerous. I felt trapped between my guilt for betraying Mike and my desperate need to explore the passionate, forbidden connection with Charles and Andrew. In the quiet of the night, as I lay in bed, the echoes of our past encounters reverberated in my mind. I recalled the stolen kisses, the secret rendezvous, and the thrill of hidden promises that once made me feel so alive. Now, those memories were tainted by the creeping realization that I was losing control. I had built a life of deception, and each lie was tightening its grip, threatening to shatter everything I had known. The tension reached a breaking point when Mike confronted me one evening. His voice, thick with emotion, demanded answers that I was no longer able to provide. "Kimberly, who are you really? What have you been hiding from me?" he asked, his eyes brimming with hurt and betrayal. I stood there, caught in the crossfire of my dual existence, knowing that one wrong word could destroy the fragile remnants of trust between us. As Mike's questions echoed in the dim light of our living room, I realized that the path I had chosen had led me to a precipice. The truth, like a dormant volcano, was about to erupt, and I was powerless to stop the consequences of the secrets I had so desperately tried to keep hidden. The day of reckoning arrived with a heavy silence that filled our home. I knew that every secret I had hidden, every stolen moment of passion with Charles and Andrew, was about to be exposed. The air felt thick with tension as I sat alone in the living room, staring at the scattered pieces of my past, a collection of letters, photographs, and mementos that bore witness to my forbidden love. I could feel the weight of my choices pressing down on me, and the sound of the clock ticking seemed to echo my heart's slow, painful beat. Mike had been distant for weeks, his eyes carrying a storm of hurt and suspicion. That night, as I sat by the window, I heard his footsteps approaching from the hallway. The sound of his heavy steps sent a chill down my spine. I knew that he had found more evidence, a box hidden beneath the bed filled with letters and small tokens of my secret encounters. His discovery had shattered the illusion of our peaceful home and forced both of us to face the truth. When he finally entered the room, his gaze was cold and determined. "Kimberly," he said, his voice thick with a mixture of anger and sorrow, "we need to talk." The words felt like a death knell, marking the end of the life I had so carefully constructed. In that moment, the weight of my actions pressed down on me, and I could see the pain reflected in his eyes, a pain that went far beyond mere betrayal. I tried to explain, to justify the choices I had made, but the words caught in my throat. How could I explain the emptiness I had felt for years, the overwhelming need for something more than the monotonous life I led? I remembered the rush of excitement that came with every letter from Charles and the wild, unpredictable freedom that Andrew had offered me. Yet, none of those moments could justify the heartbreak I was now causing. Mike's voice broke through my thoughts. "How could you do this?" he demanded, his eyes searching mine for some trace of the woman he once loved. Tears welled up in my eyes as I struggled to find the right words. I admitted that I had been lost, that the letters and secret meetings had been my escape from a life that felt suffocating and empty. I confessed to the passion that had consumed me, a passion that blinded me to the love and loyalty that once defined our marriage. But with each word I spoke, I could see that it only deepened the wound in Mike's heart. In the days that followed, the fallout was swift and painful. Mike's professional world began to crumble as well, as his colleagues learned of the scandal that had invaded his home life. I felt like I had not only betrayed my husband, but had also become the source of chaos in a life that was once so orderly and predictable. The letters that had once been symbols of forbidden hope now lay as harsh reminders of what I had lost. The confrontation reached its climax one cold evening when Mike, overwhelmed by despair and duty, issued an ultimatum. "I can't live with these secrets any longer, Kimberly. Either you choose the life we built together, or you walk away from everything. Your home, your family, your future." His words pierced me like a dagger, and for a moment, I felt the full force of the consequences of my actions. I was forced to confront the reality that passion without honesty had led me down a path of ruin. In the aftermath of that fateful night, our home became a battleground of silence and regret. I was left to pick up the shattered pieces of my identity, haunted by the choices I had made in search of passion and freedom. The love I had once craved had turned into a bittersweet reminder of what I had sacrificed, a love that was now tangled in betrayal and heartbreak. As I reflect on these events, I realize that the cost of chasing forbidden desires is often far higher than the thrill of the moment. I share my story not to evoke sympathy, but to remind you that every choice has its consequences. Life can be a maze of passion and regret, and sometimes the price of freedom is paid in tears. If you found my story captivating and meaningful, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more tales of love, loss, and redemption.